advice would you give to future students?
My main advice would just be to keep trying, because you see a lot of schools in their first year, they get like, I don't know, 50 laps or so in a qualifying race, and you see the top schools out there getting 200, 300 laps. But next year, especially since my first year, the goal for everybody was qualify at 100 laps, and now qualifying is at 200 laps, and you see all those schools meeting it. So as long as you try the first time and then come back again the next year and try, there's always a big improvement.
Oh, fantastic, thank you. Has by doing this program inspired any of you by the career choice?
So doing this program has helped me kind of dive a little bit more into robotics and engineering, whereas normally I was just kind of solely interested in computer science, so it has swayed into like personal engineering projects and stuff like that.
Okay, and having said that, Cameron, we'll go with you for this next question. Not to single you out, but you are a coach. Has your perspective changed from participating in high school to now participating as a coach? And if your perspective has changed, do you feel that there's a greater need for the competition now than you did when in high school?
I would say my perspective hasn't changed too much. I'm still, like, even though I can't really race the car and stuff like that, I'm still pretty eager to beat the top teams. But it is fun to see since this is our first year, it was very fun to see the kids kind of engineer and kind of think outside the box of what they can change about the car. So just letting them like do their own thing was really interesting. And then I kind of forgot the second part of the question.
And okay, sorry. Do you see a greater need for the competition now than you did when you were in high school?
Yeah, I think now as the competition evolves and as the cars evolve, there's definitely a lot more that people are learning about the car and the engineering process, as well as just like working as a team building that car. So I think they're learning a lot of valuable skills for future careers or just life skills in general.
Okay. And this might seem a little similar to one of the questions Lisa asked, but I'm going to ask it anyhow. Knowing that fuel cells, I'm so sorry. Looking back over your H2GP careers, what are some of the most positive ways the competition impacted you, whether it be interest in something like sustainability or a college major?
Yeah, so originally I never actually got to compete as a student because I was a year ahead of the team being formed at Edison. But since Evan, Cameron, and Ian have been involved, I've kind of tagged along and got to see a part of the process. From when they built their first car to now when they're hacking one of the most advanced hydrogen systems on the grid. It's kind of interesting to see exactly how they changed originally what they wanted to do in college and what they focused on in high school to now what they're doing with Cameron actually being in college and Ian going to school next year. And as well as myself, just paying attention to the competition as a whole, I became interested in product design and prototyping, and now that's one of the things that I'm focusing on in work and college in general. Even though I never was directly involved, it inspired me to take a different route than I originally thought.
Anyone else want to take the question?
Yeah, I'll answer a little something. When I first joined the program at Edison, I wasn't really a whole part of the racing program, and then they ended up sucking me into it, and it gave me a whole new side, a whole new perspective of what was happening besides the classes that we were in, and it gave me a whole insight to something I've never learned before, and I thought that was really interesting.
Okay, all right. And then the last question here. If you could go back in time and change one part of the H2GP competition, like learning more about fuel cells, then what would it be?
I would say spending the time to actually learn about the cell and hack it earlier, because we didn't really get to do it until my senior year, and then of course that was cut short by COVID, so we never actually got to experience racing with a hacked fuel cell. We always just kind of we're too afraid to actually dive into learning about how it works and how to modify it. But once we actually learned about it, it was like such a neat thing to actually find out how it works, to actually figure out how a fuel cell on the inside is constructed and what each component does, and then from there to modify it to make it better or more efficient. If we had done that earlier, it would have been a completely different experience.
Is that the group answer?
I'd also add on that I think it'd be a little better if we have more people in the team be able to have like that hands-on experience in actually working and building on the car, because I know a lot of teams have certain people that build the car and then other people have their specific jobs, but if more people knew how to actually work with it, then the entire team would know how to solve problems a little bit.
Okay, and I fudged a little bit. I'm going to ask one more question. So, are there any last words of wisdom for whether it be current competitors, future ones that aren't, in the program yet, or industry? Like, anything that the industry could learn from this program could make it better? Any words of wisdom?
Talk to the teams that are beating you. I know a lot of the coaches, especially like Marcos from Oakwood and Mario, who used to coach Steam Legacy. If you just ask them questions about like what they're doing or maybe like a fault with your car, a lot of the time they're very, very open to kind of helping you out. They're not a closed book. It's definitely a great resource if you're starting out.
And my advice would just be think outside the box and keep trying, Don't let that first race dictate how your team is going to go. Just keep pushing, and eventually you're going to be at the top of the grid. Yeah, and experiment with things. Like, if you look at all the top teams in California and even in the United States, all their cars have similar modifications. But if you look at the cars in Russia, some of them are running 2 hydrogen systems or whatever, right? If you think about stuff that, some other team isn't running, and you don't know if it's going to work, just try it out. Who knows? You might come up with a race-winning car. Like, I know one Northern California team, Heritage, was running 2 hydrogen systems on their car today, and it really worked.
Hey, that's good.
Yeah, and I would say don't be afraid to try something nobody's tried before, because the worst that could happen is you learn something new. So it either works out really well for you, or you know what you need to do in the future, and that neither of those things is a bad thing.